Welcome to The Explainer. When we think about the Exodus, we almost always jump straight to that blockbuster movie image, right? The parting seas, the 10 dramatic plagues, Charlton Heston with the staff. But diving into the source material, it reveals something way deeper. It turns out Exodus isn't just a standalone episode. It's literally the vital connective tissue of the entire biblical narrative. It is the essential link that bridges humanity's origins with absolutely everything that comes after.
So let's just jump right into the core question here. How exactly does a rescue mission in ancient Egypt end up shaping the entire story of the Bible? To answer that, we really need to shift our perspective today. Instead of just zooming in on isolated historical events, we're going to look at Exodus as a macro narrative. It's essentially the definitive blueprint for understanding humanity's ongoing relationship with God.
To really get this, we've got to zoom out for a second and look at the story so far, from Eden to Egypt. Because to understand Exodus, we have to connect it directly back to where the book of Genesis left off.
All right, so think back to Eden. Humanity rebels and they forfeit God's blessing. In response to that, God chooses Abraham's family to act as the vehicle to restore that blessing back to the world. Fast forward a bit, and Abraham's grandson Jacob brings his family of 70 down into Egypt, which basically serves as a safe haven for them. Centuries roll by, and we arrive at the era of Moses. Now, the text specifically notes that the Israelites were fruitful and multiplied. And that's not just some random demographic fact. That is a deliberate, powerful echo of the original blessing God gave humanity way back in the Garden of Eden. The plan is actually working. Which brings us to deliverance from empire and confronting human rebellion. We zoom in on Egypt, and there's a new pharaoh in power who definitely doesn't see this growing Israelite family as a blessing. To him, they're a massive threat, which kicks off this truly epic confrontation.
And this whole setup brilliantly illustrates a clash between two totally opposite kingdoms. On one side, you have Pharaoh's empire, which basically epitomizes human rebellion. He has literally redefined the systematic murder of innocent Israelite baby boys as a good thing for his national security. It's horrific. But then on the exact opposite side, you have Yahweh's justice. You see God's absolute, unwavering commitment to protect the oppressed, to defeat this profound evil, and to provide a real escape route for his people.
So when Moses is standing there at the burning bush, he asks for God's name, and God reveals it. I am who I am, Yahweh. Now, this isn't just some abstract philosophical title. It points to a continual, self-sustaining, and completely unchanging existence. Basically, it means God's character is perfectly consistent. His promise to rescue his people, it's engraved right into his very identity. He doesn't depend on anyone else, and he is going to faithfully bring his people out of that oppression.
Now, as we know, this confrontation escalates to those famous 10 plagues. But what's absolutely crucial to remember here is that God actually offers Pharaoh multiple chances to humble himself. But Pharaoh, he just repeatedly hardens his own heart. So finally, God turns the tables on Pharaoh's evil. Just as Pharaoh murdered the sons of the Israelites, judgment falls on the firstborn of Egypt. But, and this is the key, God provides a means of escape through the Passover. By sacrificing a spotless lamb and painting its blood on their doorframes, the Israelites are literally passed over by this divine plague. It is such a profound moment. You have perfect justice against evil and incredible mercy for the oppressed, meeting right there at the doorframe. And it's a moment the Israelites were commanded to reenact every single year.
Okay, so after this miraculous escape through the sea, and let's be honest, quite a bit of grumbling and complaining from the Israelites out in the wilderness, they finally arrive at Mount Sinai. And this is where we see the invitation to become a kingdom of priests through the covenant at Sinai.
Right here, God fundamentally expands that original promise he made to Abraham. He doesn't just want a rescued people, he wants a representative people. So he offers the Israelites this covenant, famously governed by the 10 Commandments. And the deal is, if they obey, they become a kingdom of priests. Their entire society, their worship, their justice system is meant to show the surrounding nations exactly what God's character looks like. They are literally the bridge between God and the rest of the world. But God wants to take this relationship even further. He wants a portable Eden, where he can actually dwell with humanity. Because remember, ever since the rebellion in the Garden of Eden, humanity's direct access to God's presence was lost. So, God's ultimate goal with this covenant is to fully restore that access and live right there among his people again. To make this happen, Moses is given these intensely detailed architectural blueprints for a sacred tent called the tabernacle. It's kind of like the ultimate divine flat pack assembly, but with cosmic stakes. And the details are amazing. The golden lampstand with its blossoms directly evokes the tree of life. The cherubim sitting on the Ark of the Covenant,
That recalls the angels guarding Eden. God even delivers these instructions across 7 speeches, which perfectly mirrors the 7 days of creation. Through all these deliberate symbolic callbacks, God is literally recreating a portable Eden. It's designed to be this heaven-on-earth hotspot where God and humanity can actually live together in peace.
In theory, beautiful plan. But then the tension just violently spikes. While Moses is literally still up on the mountain getting these blueprints, the Israelites lose their patience and immediately break the very first commandments they just agreed to. They build a golden calf and start worshiping it right at the foot of the mountain. It's an unbelievable disaster, and it leaves us staring at this really haunting question. Will God still choose to dwell with them after such a spectacular, immediate failure?
Well, Moses steps in. He intercedes, desperately appealing to God's character and those ancient promises to Abraham. And incredibly, God responds by relenting. He renews the covenant, and he declares himself to be merciful and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in covenant faithfulness, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin. That specific self-description is so foundational, it actually becomes the most quoted verse throughout the entire rest of the Bible. It proves that God remains utterly faithful to his promises, even when his own people are faithless.
Okay, so the covenant is renewed. The tabernacle is painstakingly built, exactly to those blueprints. God's glorious presence descends upon the tent, and hopes are incredibly high. But then, the book of Exodus ends on this stunning cliffhanger. Moses walks up to enter the tent, and he can't. He is physically blocked from going inside by the sheer intensity of God's holy presence. It's this profound, devastating visual realization. While Pharaoh was the big external enemy at the start of the book, Israel clearly has a much deeper problem now. They escaped Egypt, sure, but they can't escape their own internal corruption. Their own sin is now the biggest barrier to God's presence.
Now, zooming back out, this cliffhanger isn't just an ancient problem waiting for the book of Leviticus to come along and solve it. It establishes the ultimate Exodus pattern, a repeating cycle of salvation that defines the entire rest of the biblical story.
This ancient narrative locks in this beautiful 4-step cycle of salvation. First, there's oppression and death. Second, God steps in and brings deliverance. Third, he invites the rescued people into a covenant relationship. And finally, the ultimate goal, bringing them into his presence. And as you read on, you see this cycle repeat over and over again as God continually seeks to rescue humanity.
And as the source material points out, this exact Exodus pattern finds its absolute ultimate fulfillment centuries later in Jesus. Think about the Gospel of John, where it says the Son of God dwelt among us. That Greek word for dwelt, it literally translates to tabernacle. Jesus basically becomes the new tabernacle. He is the ultimate heaven-on-earth space. He brings total deliverance, establishes a new covenant, and finally, permanently clears away the barrier so that humanity can freely enter God's presence. So the Exodus isn't just some dusty story trapped in the past. It is the macro story of humanity. It's the essential connective tissue of the Bible, establishing a pattern of rescue and presence that is still echoing right now, today. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this to ponder. How does this ancient pattern of deliverance and new life continue to shape our world and your own life today?